This video is not intended to encourage or glorify any kind of drug use. The sole purpose of these videos is to educate you on the dangers of what these substances can do to you. Please do not do any of the acts mentioned in this video. I repeat, do not do any of the acts mentioned in this video.
Welcome to the world of Tales from the Trip.
So this happened when I was 18 and I'm currently 36, but I recently found Tales from the Trip and figured it might be an interesting read to share with you guys. So from the ages of 16 to 18, I was addicted to DXM, as well as doing any drug I could find, even Datura, because it was readily accessible at the store for free via retail theft. It started off with the nasty syrup, but since that was nearly intolerable to chug down, I felt fortunate when someone pointed me in the direction of where to get Quercetin cough and cold. This was a daily thing for about 6 months until, after being hospitalized from taking too much Benadryl alongside the triple C's, I had a breakup with the girl and decided I would eat 32 of them and either trip my face off or maybe die from the CPM. Well, the latter essentially almost happened, and while in the ICU they asked if I wanted help since I had just been there 10 days prior. I thought I would be signing myself into some kind of drug treatment program, but when I was cleared to leave the hospital, I ended up in the youth section of the psych ward instead. I had no intentions of ever eating Quercetin again, but as if by divine intervention, a commercial came on the TV that I never saw before or after. It was for the newly formulated Robitussin Max Strength Cough Gel Caps. This was in 2003, I believe. All the active ingredients of Robitussin Max Strength Cough Syrup without the syrup, it said. This was great news because I certainly didn't want to stop robotripping, but my tolerance and desire to get as high as humanely possible in any drug I could didn't quite jive with the pill, where the secondary ingredient was more dangerous than the one I wanted to ingest at the doses I wanted to ingest it. So the same day I got out of the psych ward, I went to the store immediately to see if they had this new drug in stock, and to my delight, they did. I did, however, like the kind of dark trip that Quercetin gave me compared to straight DXM, so I stole some Benadryl to go with it. It's not really in line with the story, but that trip involved seeing a giant mushroom with Mike Tyson's face and arms pursuing me through a movie theater parking lot, but I digress. With this newfounded source of just DXM, I began taking increasingly higher doses. I vomited every morning when I got to school because I would take 40 to 60 pills, 600 and 900 milligrams, before school depending on store stock the night before. I would even go to lengths as far as riding my bike 4.5 miles when the store by my house was sold out. By sold out, I guess it was really stole out. In October, the year after my previous hospitalizations, which had also occurred in October, I decided to up the dose a bit more to 80 pills, 1200 milligrams. On 2 separate occasions, my dad caught me being high, and because of the Quercetin incident the previous year, he took me to the hospital. Now maybe it was from using the shit daily for a year, but on both occasions, my resting heart rate was over 230 beats per minute. 233 is the number I remember seeing, and my blood pressure hovered around 220 over 180, which at the time meant nothing to me as I thought everyone was overreacting. But I now know that the heart can rupture at 220 beats per minute, and heart attack and stroke can occur when the systolic blood pressure goes above 180. But I was laughing and making jokes with the nurses and figured they were just overreacting because it's a teenager who is very high. I was hospitalized for 5 to 7 days both times, but the second time I had some delirium in the hospital later at night. I'm not sure if maybe they gave me atropine for my heart and blood pressure, but I believe there was a little boy in the bed with me and was having a full-blown conversation, and the guy assigned to sit outside my room in case I went into cardiac crisis kept yelling at me to shut up and go to bed, and every time he came in to scold me, the little boy would disappear. There was also a brief appearance of Michael Jackson standing in the corner watching me, but I eventually did fall asleep and woke up relatively normal with the typical afterglow of DXM. Now I tell that story to give a full scale of the story I wanted to tell, so you know my resting vitals were on 1200 milligrams a year into my addiction. On graduation day, I was kicked out of my house for drinking half a pint bottle of liquid Roxicet, 15 milligrams per tablespoon, that I got from a friend whose mom died of terminal cancer. This started what my friends and I jokingly referred to as the summer of felonies. I was homeless and spent my days and nights eating Robitussin gel caps. I slept very little and spent my nights breaking into cars to steal money, guns, anything of value, and a few times the car itself to drive to Walmart to steal more Robogels before returning it. In a 2-week period, I ate 2 pieces of chicken and 3 baked potatoes, and always joked that I would someday write an autobiography called Robitussin and the Occasional Potato. My mental state quickly deteriorated from the lack of sleep and malnourishment, coupled with massive amounts of dissociative drugs. I would unintentionally rhyme my words constantly while talking, and would be acutely aware when it happened afterwards. My friends started to jokingly refer to me as the Reverend Jesse, alluding to how Jesse Jackson often rhymes when he speaks. I was also big into retail theft to make money, and at around 4 a.m. on July 4th, 2005, on one of my late-night trips to steal more Robitussin, I ran into a kid I went to school with. I proceeded to tell him I could steal anything he wanted for half the price of the item, and he decided to pick me up when an automotive store opened in a few hours. I went out to the car that I had taken for a joyride and proceeded to swallow 80 pills, 1,200 milligrams. Around 8 a.m. he picks me up and we go into the store and he points out what he wants, which is a huge box of floodlights for his truck, but I'm wearing a very large button-up jersey, so I'm game. I get out the store no problem and go sit in his truck. He's taking forever for some reason, and a man in a tie comes out to the car and asks what I took from the store. I say I have no idea what he's talking about. He asks me to come back in the store with him, and knowing the cops are probably coming, I cooperate and start walking with him back towards the store until a clear path to run opens up. So I sprint away and up a very steep hill about 3 stories high into a neighborhood. Mind you, resting heart rate of 233 at 1,200 milligrams a year and a half previously, and I've done far more damage to my body with constant tachycardia at this point. So my heart is beating out of my chest, and I eventually feel safe and call the guy like, what the fuck happened? And after a brief description of whatever the hell he was fucking off doing instead of making the getaway, he tells me he's at the McDonald's by the store. I ask if everything is clear, if there's any cops at the store, and he assures me all is good and just sneak down to the McDonald's and we'll leave. So I make my way back down this steep ass hill and decide I better peek around the corner of the building before making my break for McDonald's. At the exact moment I peek around the building and see a cop talking to the guy who confronted me, they happen to also look at me. So I proceeded to sprint back up this hill with my heart already pounding from before, but with the added adrenaline from fleeing police this time. The cop is tripping and slipping trying to get up this hill, so I decide instead of risking a heart attack, which I clearly was on the verge of, I was going to dive under this pool deck and wedge myself as far back and up as I could. What I didn't notice in my altered state is that the owner was apparently sitting on his deck when I did this, so I quickly heard the footsteps on the deck and the guy proceeding to come down and ask me what the fuck I was doing. I said some guys were chasing me trying to jump me and he told me to come out. My cover was already blown, so I complied. At about the same time I got out from under the deck, I saw the police officer finally emerge from the top of the hill, so I immediately started running again, but was very quickly cut off by the surgeon's undercover car. Fun fact, this was the same officer who taught DARE in my 5th grade class, which I actually received an award for doing better than all the other kids. Funny how things turn out. At this point, I'm pretty sure my heart is going to give out at any moment, and I just kind of collapse onto the hood of the car in the being arrested position. I can't breathe, but not because I feel super winded, but because my heart is beating so hard it's not allowing me to take full breaths. I alert the police what's going on with me, and just like in the nature of kind helping police officers, they just denied me any medical attention and took me to the station instead. It took me about an hour for my heart to slow down to a rate that wasn't affecting me, and after charging me and confiscating my 3X Cadillac jersey for evidence, they let me go. So what does one do to celebrate not going to jail? Smoke some weed and go steal and ingest another 80 pills, of course. Cumulative 2,400 milligrams in a 6-hour period now. Every time I would smoke weed with DXM, I would enter a state called the void. It was basically akin to a walking K-hole. The world would look like it existed in layers, like some weird art with a background, foreground, and multiple layers between the two. I was never one to see UFOs or aliens or whatever other shit they say happens at a 4th plateau dose. I mostly enjoyed DXM because I believed it gave me insight into the nature of death, as morbid as that sounds. After another maybe 2 hours, I decide, hey, it's the 4th of July, let's take this to the next level, and go to another store, as I'd stolen the first store's entire stock at this point. When I go to the other store, they too are out of Robogel, so I opt to steal a box of Coricidin Cough and Cold instead. Reasoning? It's just a box like I've taken countless times, not enough CPM to hurt me, but I am sure it certainly contributed to what happened next. At this point, it is somewhere around 2 p.m., and I've ingested around 2,880 milligrams of DXM since 4 a.m. I could barely walk or talk once the Coricidin kicks in, and I am just completely trashed. My friends are going to a family 4th of July party, and obviously I'm not someone they want to bring along in my state, so I tell them to take me to my girlfriend's house. We load in the car and proceed towards my girlfriend's house. They pull over on the side of the road in some very jagged gravel, and they tell me they're running late and I'll be cool to walk from here. This is a pretty busy road with no sidewalk and about a foot of shoulder to walk on. I'm telling them they need to take me to her house, that I can barely walk, but they say, just walk, it'll help sober you up. So I get out of the back seat and stand up and kinda wobble before falling back against the car. I wore pretty baggy, loose-fitting clothes for all the theft I was doing, so when I fell against the car, my pants fell down. I bent over to try to pull them up, but lost my balance, so tried to step forward to catch myself, but of course, with my pants being around my ankles, I just tripped on them and fell forward. When my face slammed into the ground, that horizontal image of my face against the rocks froze into my vision like someone hit pause on reality. When it started to fade away and I could see regular time again, I was being lifted up into the back of the car by my friends. I tried to help them by crawling into the back seat myself, but I was completely limp and paralyzed. When I finally was able to move and got sat up, my entire body and face was covered in cuts and scrapes. I slurred, "What the fuck just happened?" as I saw the pale expressions of shock on their face, to which they replied, "You just had a fucking seizure, man." I didn't believe them at first, but after realizing just how many cuts and scrapes I had everywhere, it seemed like a pretty likely explanation for how it happened. They drove me to my dad's house, even though I'd been kicked out, but he was at work at the time. My grandfather also lived there, opened the door. Almost any time my pap noticed I was high, it would be accompanied by him furiously screaming at me. There was none of that this time. The look on his face was of sheer horror and worry, which freaked me out at the time. All he said was, "You need to go lay down, now," and not feeling so great, I decided maybe that was a good idea. After laying there extremely restless for a while and pretty certain I was going to die, I decided I was going to take a shower, both to maybe sober me up some, and also because I'd been homeless and without one for quite some time in summer heat. There had been many trips where I would freak out and think I was about to die since the ICU stays, but after it happening so many times, I just kind of accepted that if I die, I obviously deserved it for repeating it so much. Despite not eating much of anything but Robitussin for weeks, I proceeded to vomit a volume I've never matched that I have memory of. Even with the water running, it completely filled the bottom of my 3x3 foot standing shower with just a few little holes over the drain. I had to lift the drain cover and basically scoop it in there, a yellow-brown sludge. I didn't get it all, so of course when my dad discovered it when he came home, he immediately knew I had used something. But I had fallen asleep at that point, and I'm guessing whatever my pap told him deterred from waking me up to scold me. I heard about it the next day though. I was still pretty fucked up when I woke up, and for once I decided maybe I wouldn't do any drugs that day. But of course, the day after, I decided to do what I've been doing for the last 2 years straight, eat some more Robogels. I can't remember how many I ate, I just remember they were the generic store brand which I had eaten plenty of times. It felt like the veins in my neck were about to rupture, and it gave me a splitting headache, and just felt dysphoric in general. I thought, what the hell did they put in these generic pills? They suck now. I tried name brand Robitussin gel caps, tried Delsum, tried Robitussin syrup, tried Coricidin. All the same awful feeling, and to take the amount I wanted to take was just intolerable. Even when I tried it 7 years ago, close to 10 years after this incident. So yeah, I basically became allergic to Robitussin by taking in such a massive dose as to cause a seizure. After 2 years of high-dose DXM, it took me 4 years to catch a cold though. Correlation? Causation? You decide. I'd like to say my drug addiction ended there, but after 3 years of recreational drug use where I just smoked weed daily and would take other shit on weekends or sporadically during the week, I eventually got addicted to heroin after shooting it here and there over that period. 15 years later, I'm finally clean from trank dope and methadone as of the last 4.5 months. Hopefully, it's for good this time.